Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a big winter storm which is going to be heading through parts of the northern plains, especially for areas like North Dakota and northern Minnesota, where some of those areas could be dealing with 10 to 15 inches or more of snowfall. We're going to have all of that information and more in today's video, and we're also going to, in the beginning part of the video, talk about the severe storms down in central Florida because they've really strengthened overnight and now they are posing a big threat to the area. So we are going to quickly touch on that and give you all the information that you need to know to prepare for those storms. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like. You can see frost advisories in effect for Northwest California and Southwest Oregon, as well as some freeze warnings in effect for Southwestern Oregon. We have red flag warnings in effect scattered throughout parts of the Great Plains and the Southern Rockies, with some wind advisories up through parts of the Dakotas and Montana, and then of course that area of severe thunderstorms back down through central Florida. Yesterday, we had a tide high temperature in Death Valley, California. They got to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And 2 miles southwest of Cibola, Arizona, they also got to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And that was for the lower 48, the high temperature for yesterday. Yesterday, we also had a low temperature in Peterson, Utah. They got as low as 1 degree Fahrenheit. And the highest precipitation or rainfall report was near Caesar, Mississippi, where they got 4.63 inches of reported rainfall yesterday. And the highest snowfall report was a measly half an inch at Elk Mountain, Wyoming, and again, that's in southern and southeastern Wyoming. Many of the surrounding areas didn't get any snowfall. It was just a bunch of snow showers that produced up to half an inch of snowfall on some of those highest elevations. Now, here's what the current Storm Prediction Center page looks like, just to talk about the storms in parts of Florida. Yesterday they only had, I believe, a marginal and a tiny area of a slight risk in Florida. This morning they only had a slight risk, and they've now upgraded this to an enhanced risk for the central part of the state, and you're going to see why in just a little bit. So here's where the severe thunderstorm watch currently is. The Florida counties that are affected are all up here. So if you live in one of those counties that you see in the top right hand part of your screen, or even if you live south of those counties, you do want to also watch out for that, because this system eventually is going to head further to the south. So even areas like Miami, Fort Lauderdale, all those areas will eventually get hit in some form by this big expansive line of thunderstorms. And again, that's your severe thunderstorm watch. Here's your precipitation discussion. They're saying that potentially some urban flooding is possible, especially along that I-5 corridor, where we have a lot of big cities, Orlando, Florida, and a lot of big cities like that throughout that area. Also, Tampa, Florida, of course, a big city, and you could be dealing with a lot of ponding on the roadways. And then, of course, as it heads down the east coast of Florida with a lot of urban centers, we could also be dealing with some more urban flooding through there. So generally, it's producing over an inch per hour rainfall rate. So that's a lot of rain just falling at one time, and over that 1 hour time period, you could easily pick up half an inch to an inch, and that could very easily cause some flooding very, very quickly, because the drainage systems won't be able to really combat that in time. Here's what that line of storms actually looks like, and you can see how impressive this looks. And believe it or not, this is the same line of storms that I believe just a day or two ago was going through parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. So that same line of storms has now moved through parts of the panhandle of Florida. It was fairly strong there, then weakened, but as it's over water, you can see how the lower part of this that was going from the water fully kind of taking a water and an offshore track, and now it's starting to hit into areas on the west coast of Florida. It was strengthening that entire time. So this lower part of the thunderstorms, especially the southern part here, is the most convective because it has the most time over water, and it's been kind of like a hurricane, just strengthening as it's been going over those warm Gulf of Mexico waters, and now it's just pummeling into the west part of Florida and also the central part of Florida. Florida. So big cities like, again, Tampa, Orlando, and also as you go down, again, the east side of Florida, so Daytona Beach all the way down to Fort Lauderdale and Miami could be dealing with the threat of big storms. But I think it's going to be especially for these areas down here that want to worry the most about this thunderstorm event, because that looks like where the storm is really eyeing up. It's been moving pretty much directly south and southeast over the past few hours and overnight, so that's the general direction that we're expecting it to continue to move in. So let's transition over to what the GFS model is showing for the snowstorm event in parts of the northern plains. Here is your big storm out to the east, but this is not actually a storm that's bringing in all the snowfall, but what it's actually doing, it's actually playing a very, very big part into this storm, because we have a lot of cold air that's being pressed down on the northwest edge of this. So we already have a cold base layer of cold air mass in place over parts of the northern plains, and because of that, we're going to be dealing with the threat of some snowfall. So you can see it in parts of North Dakota and Montana. It doesn't look too impressive right now, just a mix of rain and snow showers by later today. But let's continue this forward. So this is by tonight and getting into very early tomorrow morning. We're dealing with more of that snow starting to expand back up through southern Canada, but still on the U.S. side of the border, we're dealing with mostly rain and maybe some light to moderate snow showers in some of these areas in North Dakota. But you're going to start to see that as we head this forward a little bit more. This is by Monday morning, and we're dealing with a lot more snowfall entering into North Dakota and Minnesota. And by the way, we're going to talk about this in a little bit longer in the video, but we have very cold temperatures out ahead of this. So we're dealing with temperatures as it's snowing by this point in the teens and 20s. So you're dealing with snow to liquid ratios of about 20-1 in some of these areas. So that means that if you were to have 1 inch of rainfall, that would be equivalent to 20 inches of snowfall in this temperature profile, and we're dealing with a fairly weak system, but because of how cold the temperatures are, it's going to be such a fluffy light snowfall that you're going to see maybe 2 or even 2.5 times what you would normally see in this type of snowstorm. So normally this would be maybe a 4 or 5 inch type of snowfall, and then you're dealing with it moving out and not a big deal. But this time, because of the very fluffy snowfall, we're going to be dealing with snow that could accumulate to 10, 11, 12, maybe even up to 15 inches of snowfall. And you're going to see that in just a little bit. So here's your low pressure. It's bringing in a lot of warm air on the east side of the storm, but a lot of cold air on the west side of the storm. And this is when, again, we're in the 20s and teens. That's going to be the big factor into this storm. So this would be by Monday in the early afternoon. Much of North Dakota and northern Minnesota dealing with some of that snowfall. That system does start to slide away further to the east. You actually have 2 different low pressure centers. You have one back through here, one back through here, and maybe another one trying to form back through here. So a very complex type of system, but all of the low pressure centers are very weak. 1005 millibars is a very, very weak type of storm, but again, it's just because of the cold temperatures, and that's mainly the reason that we're going to be dealing with a lot of snowfall. If we were in a warmer environment, we would not be dealing with as much snowfall. If it was 32 degrees, this would probably be, again, a 3, 4, 5 inch type of snowstorm, but in this case, we might be dealing with upwards of 10 inches because of those snow ratios. And then continuing this forward, this would be by early on Tuesday morning. It's continuing to do kind of a loop where you're seeing it go kind of in a circle like this. And that's just because there is nowhere for it to really go. You have high pressure to the north. You have that storm out to the east. And you also have storminess to the south and to the west as well. So it's kind of just circling around. And eventually it will find a way out of the northern plains and the Great Lakes. And it'll start to head further to the east. You are dealing with potentially a few bands of heavier snowfall though, so we want to watch out, especially in northern North Dakota and northwest Minnesota. Some heavier bands, maybe half an inch to an inch of snowfall per hour. By the way, it's already been snowing for upwards of 36 hours by this point, because it started later this afternoon. It is going to start later this afternoon, and it's going to continue all the way through Tuesday. And by this point, this is Tuesday in the early afternoon, still moderate to even heavy at times snowfall, parts of North Dakota and Minnesota. Still snowing by Wednesday morning, and then it really tapers off by the later morning on Wednesday, and that's when the system finally starts to head out of here. So here's what the GFS model is showing for snowfall, and And again, if you were just to look at not even the temperatures, but you were just to look at the precipitation without any of the temperatures overlaid or anything like that, you would expect a 3 to 5 inch snowstorm event. But in this case, we're dealing with snowfall amounts that on the GFS, which is actually a fairly conservative model in terms of the amount of snowfall they're dealing with. You're dealing with maybe upwards of 10 inches closer to the Canadian border, and a widespread 2+ inch event for much of the northern plains. And again, that's maybe 2 or even 3 times what you would typically expect in this type of event because of the temperatures. Here's a snapshot of the temperatures on early Tuesday morning when it's still snowing fairly moderately over these areas. You can see that we have temperatures into the teens and low 20s for this entire area right here. So if you have temperatures like that, you're going to have snow ratios of about 15 to 1, even 20 to 1 in some of these scenarios. Here's what the European model is showing for the same time frame for the snowfall, and you can see the European model a lot more robust. I think the European is a bit too high, and the GFS is a little bit too low in terms of the temperature or in terms of the snowfall. You can see that the European may be showing upwards of 20 inches of snowfall in some of these areas. Again, I don't think it's going to be that robust. I don't think it has that much energy to really do that, but I do think some areas could definitely reach a foot of snowfall, 12 inches of snowfall, and I wouldn't even put it past some areas to get upwards of 15 inches of snowfall. And if you want to see what the Weather Prediction Center is showing for this event, I put on the 75th percentile of snowfall, meaning that there's a 25% chance that this overperforms and a 75% chance that this underperforms. I like to use the 75th percentile because I find that the 50th percentile is a lot really too low in terms of the snowfall totals, and most of the time the 75th percentile actually becomes the more accurate one. And you can see that the 75th percentile is even showing anywhere in this blue 6+ inches. So that covers the northern half of North Dakota and even some parts of Montana and Minnesota. And then you can even see that some of these areas in the light blue are dealing with the probability of seeing 12 or more inches of snowfall. And then even up through southern Canada and even a few parts of North Dakota, some areas getting over 15 inches of snowfall in the pinks. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.